Okay, everybody, it's 12 o'clock and a seminar or a webinar or a presentation would probably not be complete without a little technical glitch. Fortunately, our topic today is about play. So we can embrace the circumstance. I am going to put our panelists on mute while I give you a welcome. So officially, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for receiving us in your home. We are very grateful to you because without you, we would not have the opportunity to be together at this moment. I am Elsa Chahin, the President and CEO of Pikler USA, an all-volunteer nonprofit organization. This is our third week of our weekly webinar series, reaching out to you at home. Most of us around the world are practicing sheltering at home to keep others and ourselves safe. And it offers us a unique opportunity to reach out and to share inspirational ideas. I would like to start with a quote by Nobel Peace Laureate Desmond Tutu, and I quote, "A person is a person through other persons. None of us comes into the world fully formed. We need other human beings in order to be human. I am because other people are. A person is entitled to a stable community life, and the first of these communities is the family." I thought this is a very appropriate quote because we are going to be speaking about creating a joyful atmosphere within the family. It was raining this morning. It's still a little bit raining, and it's been raining nonstop all week when I prepared what I would say to you today. And in addition to all the goodness that rain brings, I was also reminded of the beauty of rainbows and how they bring out our playfulness. They always stop us on our tracks, and there is something magical about them. Just like there is something magical about our panelists today. So this is why I am personally offering to you today the playfulness of rainbows in our panelists. First, I am happy to introduce to you one of my best friends and mentors in the whole world, physiotherapist, master Pikler Trainer, and master play expert. I might add, Mrs. Ute Strub, who invited me on a risk-taking and playful adventure to reach out to our expert panelist, Professor Stuart Brown, with this invitation, was right. Because he said yes, and here we all are. I am delighted to introduce you then to Professor Stuart Brown from Stanford University, who is the best-selling author of the book, Play, How It Shapes the Brain, Opens the Imagination, and Invigorates the Soul. It has been translated into 12 languages. He believes, through his countless research on the topic, that play enhances overall human well-being. As the information-based play grows, it is evident, he says, that play is a public health necessity. Then is Mr. Tony Christopher, who's supporting us here in technology. And he is a board member of the National Institute for Play, the organization founded by Professor Brown, and they have been collaborating together. Tony, as he likes to be lovingly called, is an expert of online communities from the very beginning, leading teams in developing and deploying online collaboration and knowledge management initiatives for Fujitsu, Apple Computer, Cisco, NASA, the FAA, and Stanford University. In addition, he loves to playfully cook and eat great food. And if you've been watching our webinars, our next guest will not be unfamiliar to you. So I present Mrs. Pia Dögl, who originated the idea that we partner together to offer resources for our community during times of change. Pia is a parenting counselor, author, and social entrepreneur. Pia has focused her work on fostering the precious potential of children and the empathetic well-being of the whole family. As part of our introduction, I wanted to find some commonalities among all five of us. First, I discovered in Professor Brown's book, Play, that his grandson is named Leo, same name as Ute's grandson, and my own son. But what about Tony and Pia? Did they have any Leos in their life? Then I searched a little more and found that all of our first names have 2 syllables. Stuart, Pia, Tony, Ute, Elsa. But that wasn't interesting enough. Then I realized that our one commonality is the value we all give to play. Professor Brown writes in his book, and I quote, "Our species is built for play and built by play." And this is the same reason why we are here together with you. So what is play? Before we go on with our presentation, I first would like to start by asking you for your own definition of play. So please think about this for a moment and write us your answers or keywords. I will read them. Please write us some keywords. We want to incorporate your ideas as well. Joy, creativity, freedom, preparing for life, enjoyable, free exploration, for pleasure, imagination, active exploration of the world through fun and curiosity, self-motivated, to be open for whatever comes along, to be myself, to be spontaneous, unstructured and voluntary, discovery, letting go of control, unlimited, an opportunity to process emotions and thoughts, experimenting. What I do when I am free, I do anything. Wow. These are amazing, beautiful. Take note, Professor Brown, because these may be incorporated in your next book, if they aren't already. As part of the Pikler pedagogy, we consider free play to be many of the descriptions that you just sent to us. Internally motivated, spontaneous, essential for the child's health, a conduit for working out inner conflicts, involves no contests, no win or lose, no right or wrong, is an expression of the child's psychic life. Play, then, exists for play's sake. It should be pleasurable for the child. A child's life consists in great part of play. It is a fundamental need. We feel that every child should be allowed to play whenever not involved in a caregiving activity. And to this, we add the concept of free play, not directed or instructed play, but free play in a safe space where a child can have the opportunity to discover and let his imagination wander. This opportunity to move and play freely reinforces the child's trust in himself, in herself, in his and her sense of self, and can internally, the child may be saying, I am interested. I decide what to do. I try something new. I learn from my failures and my successes. There is a very important aspect in the Pikler pedagogy, and that is the relationship between caregiving moments, freedom of movement, and play. We believe that without sensitive, responsive caregiving experiences between the child and the adult, independent free play would be compromised because caregiving moments and play are interdependent. A secure attachment allows the child the freedom to explore and play independently of the adult. Dr. Pikler believed that observation of the child's play experiences was essential in shaping the attitude of the adult. In fact, she said, and I quote, as a matter of principle, we refrain from teaching skills and activities which under suitable conditions will evolve through the child's own initiative and independent activity. She went on to explain that it is crucial that the child discovers as much as possible on his own. If we assist in accompanying every task, we deprive him of the single most important aspect of his development. A child who achieves things through independent experimentation acquires an entirely different kind of knowledge than does a child who has ready-made solutions offered to him. Thank you, Dr. Emmy Pikler. And now I invite our first panelist, Professor Stuart Brown. Welcome, Professor Brown.
Thank you. It was a wonderful introduction and a beautiful soliloquy. One of the definitions of play is training for the unexpected. And I think with the technical glitch and with the pandemic upon us, we all are going to need to be training for some things that are unexpected, and play helps us do that. So it's an honor and pleasure to be here. I've followed Pikler from the distance, and it's nice to be a little closer to you all. And I have great respect for what you've done and the changes you make in the lives throughout their lives once they have had contact at the Pikler Institute. I thought I would run through a series of kind of grounding slides, and please feel free to intervene in any questions you may have. Otherwise, I may go on forever. But we'll start with this initial slide, which shows a bit about the National Institute for Play, which was started because I found that mass murderers and years ago did not play. And then through some research on felony drunken drivers and other populations, began to recognize that play itself was tremendously important, but it was a little tough to figure out what play actually is. So let's take a look at some of the grounding things about play itself. Here is a mom and her infant, and I hope you can see this, looking at each other with loving eyes, and some remarkable things happen spontaneously that are hardwired into both of them when they make this eye contact. For example, if you want to get a little bit scientific, you can wire the mom and the infant up and with a 256 lead electroencephalogram. And what you find out is that at that moment of pupil contact and joyous smiling and the mother getting involved in baby talk and each of them mutually experiencing joy, that the right side of the brain of each is in sync with the other. That is, there is a rhythmic union between the two. And since we are a social species grounded in joy, if we have the opportunity, this is a kind of an example that says play and joyfulness and contact are a fundamental given if the atmosphere is free and open between the mother and infant, the child the caretaker and the infant. And if you want to take a bit of technology and put it into action, here is a special needs child, a father and mother in the backyard of an Alabama friend of mine. And there is the eye contact and movement and mutual joy, which adds to the science a little technology, because three-dimensional movement and eye contact in a playful setting, free and playful setting, has lots of benefit. Here's another example, and the man you see in the lower part of the picture is Tom Norquist, who, upon hearing of the attunement between the mother and infant, designed this expression swing, which now can be both for adult and adult or adult and child. So there is a practical element to play science, which we really need, I think, to live out in our cultures wherever we are in the world, since play is embedded in each of us from birth. So this is an example of a Japanese macaque looking closely into the eyes of her infant. So you begin to see that the evolution of play behavior itself has years and years of trial and error, many millions of years, to establish itself as something very, very important to not only our species, but many of our animal cousins.
It's a tricky thing to study a brain at play. For one thing, you can't use human brains. Not many parents would sign up to have their kids' brain fiddled with. But rats? They're a different story. One of the main scientists who studies play in rats is a guy named Ute Strub. Some people also know him as the rat tickler. You'll find out why a little later.
Every human being knows what play is. Every child knows what play is. I can recognize it in a snap. The problem was, can you bring that into the laboratory?
Ute wanted to know where in the brain play comes from. Is it a learned activity that's developed in the outer cortex, most recently evolved part of the brain? Or is it a basic, ancient function of the bottom part, like eating and sleeping and sex? Ute came up with a pretty straightforward way to answer that question. What he did was surgically remove the cortex from the brains of young rats, and then he waited to see if they still wanted to play with their full-brained friends. They did. They tussled and wrestled just like normal rats, and that's essentially what rat play is.
It's like professional wrestling. Why do people enjoy professional wrestling? It's all theater, we know that, but we still enjoy it.
The rats would even chase a human hand that had played with them, hoping for more play. And that is how the rat tickler got his name.
I have two young kids that love tickle games, so I just made it smaller for rats.
Since even rats missing the most highly evolved layer of their brains sought out play, the experiment showed that the play impulse must have come from a deep and primitive part of the brain, one that's most likely shared with all mammals and lots of other animals too. To be in such an ancient place in the brain, Ute and others think play must be vital to survival. Otherwise, the playful rats would have died off a long time ago. Playing rats would presumably make easier prey for watchful predators. But they didn't die off. Instead, they thrived. Why? Scientists still disagree about that, but Ute and a lot of others think that the reason play exists is because it develops what in humans we might call social skills.
As soon as you begin to play, you begin to learn about the social world.
Ute's rats are learning about the give and take of interactions and finding out where the limits are. Play may be the mechanism that allows animals to learn to live in social groups and to navigate complex hierarchies and social situations.
Play is a very valuable, it's not just superfluous, it's a very valuable thing for child development. And we as a culture have to learn how to use it properly, and we have to make sure our kids get plenty of it.
Ute Strub witnessed what might be the best anecdotal evidence for his theory when he watched what happened in the lab when two boy rats were put in a room with a single girl rat. The one boy rat who had had lots of play growing up was basically the rat version of George Clooney. The other guy didn't stand a chance.
I wanted to give you a little science as far as play is concerned, so that's why I included that short clip relatively short clip of Jacques, who also is a pioneer. But I think we also need to think about play as offering a very different group of types. Here's body play, and this little girl is just having a great time, just enjoying the very essence of her body. And here is also a play which involves risk-taking. There is a gradual sense as play occurs naturally that you take risks that are reasonable, and you learn how to deal with the world as it is through risks. And look at this view of this boy's face. He's in a different state of being. Play itself is separate from all other biological states and is a separate state of being. And here we have object play. Another Japanese macaque. I was very disappointed when I saw him because I thought he would play snowball fighting, but he just rolled it down the hill. Here is a little idea of hand-brain coevolution. The fossil hand you see in the human hand is a part of Australopithecine sediba, 1.5 million-year-old remnant of Homo sapiens. And what you find is this hand has an opposable thumb. And if you look at the cranial casts of this small-brained Australopithecine, you see that the prefrontal cortex, the executive cortex, is much enlarged as compared to the other portions of this only 500 cc brain, whereas human beings have over 1,000 cc's as a normal brain. So the point of this is that free use of the hands, which is certainly part of the Pikler philosophy, is really an important element and is a part of human adequacy. Here is social play, which is another part of play. These two are beginning to learn the essence of being one with the other, which is an important part, particularly now when we are quarantined and sheltered, that we still maintain our social contacts. Here's rough and tumble play. Very different signature of play, but a type of play terribly important. None of the murderers I studied engaged in normal rough and tumble play, which is what part of the learning of empathy. And both boys and girls are involved in this play. And here is mixed age play in Vietnam. Terribly important, not terribly common in our school settings where same age play it seems to be the case, but bullies are often quite modified by the older children in mixed age play. Here is exploratory play. That says enough about what this boy is learning about his mother's anatomy. And here is imaginative play. This young man can be anyone. All of these components that are part of the essence of play itself are terribly important for the development of an authentic self, a real self that comes from motivation from within. So here is narrative play. This little girl had never seen that object, but in her own mind's eye, she had to contrive and make up something. And her real self made up a story about that object, which, though it may not have been entirely realistic, was a part of how she made sense of the world. So play in itself, narrative play, makes sense of the world when it comes from within the child. And here is a little heckling and some of the more complicated forms of play, some of which we could go on and on about. And one of the wonders of play is that what it does is produce the essence of belonging. And if we're going to be part of a community and get along with the differences in each other, part of that is sown in the early play that Pikler, of course, and others are pioneers in producing. This is the Texas Tower, where I got started in getting interested in play, in that a young man went up to the top of this tower, killed his wife and mother the night before. He was 25 years old, no legal history, killed 14 people, wounded 32, and I was told he was killed by crossfire in the top of this tower. But I was told to try and figure out by my boss then why he did this. And in the course of some very, very detailed investigation, which included his background, which was almost devoid of play and surrounded by violence, that he did not engage because of a disturbed and overbearing father. He did not engage in normal play, and that led to many, many years of 6,000 or so play histories and the ability to spend a few years studying animal play in the wild, which is how I kind of got to be where I am now. And here are some of the benefits of play. I won't read all these, but think about how we trust each other, how we have empathy for each other. The whole question of optimism. Imagine what it's like now with fear-based concern about the pandemic and sheltering and limited activity. Nonetheless, if we engage within our families and within our own memories, our own play experiences, the feeling of optimism is it's certainly kindled. So I won't go through all of this, but there are wonderful benefits of play, and the opposite of play, of course, is considered not work, but depression. An element which I'm getting close to being done here that I think is tremendously important is to discover your own deep intrinsic motivation, what works for you that really is kindled by play itself. And here are some kind of examples. Are you a joker, a storyteller, an artist, creator, competitor? And these are not scientific, but they're archetypes of a play personality that is biologically determined and a fingerprint. Just like our fingerprints are our own uniqueness, we each have a unique play preference within us. And I remember when I was back doing general practice and delivering babies, that a newborn nurse, very savvy newborn nurse said to me when, at that time, mothers were kept in the hospital for 5 or 6 days, so you got a chance to see their offspring. And then this very savvy nurse would say, see this little kid? They're going to like music when they grow up because they like to listen to the background music. Or see this young man, he loves to have his body touched. He's going to be an athlete. So there is an evidence very early of play personality and play preferences. And I kind of close by showing this picture of Jane Goodall, who is the primatologist par excellence, studied chimpanzees in Gombe and Tanzania for years. And I got to know Jane and her mother many, many years ago, and she's on our board and I was on her board. And what I found out was that Jane's mother, I said, well, how did Jane get to be who she is? She said, well, when she was 3 years old, she went out into the garden and dug up some worms and brought the worms in and put them on the bed. And I thought to myself, well, boy, if that had been my mom, she would have cleaned up the bed immediately. And she said, we looked at the worms and then we decided that they were better off back in the ground. And Jane always had a deep interest in animals, and look at what she's done with her play personality in her life. So that's kind of the rundown that I would give you for this Stuart Brown component. And I'm open to any questions and would be happy to discuss things more fully. So I hope that wasn't too long, Elsa.
That was beautiful, Professor. Thank you very much. And it reminds me, when you were talking about the play personality, when I do my seminars, after I have the participants give me their definition of play, then I ask them, well, how do you play as adults? And the responses don't come so quickly. So I would like to invite our audience to tell us a little bit about how they play and perhaps guess their play personality or ask you any question at this moment. And Pia will come in also to facilitate this portion of the presentation.
So who do you want to call on first, Elsa?
Let's see. Do I have some responses? Well, first of all, amazing, Professor Brown, thank you. The slides are showing up beautifully. So thank you, Tony, that's you. So one participant, Pia, can you see the question, the chat? Oops, sorry, I have to unmute you.
So it's just I haven't any questions so far. I'm a storyteller. I like to play spies with my sister and write, hold on. I can't see any questions so far. What about you, Elsa?
Okay, I'll just read some of the comments. I love rough and tumble play. I collect espresso cups. I love dancing. I love being in my garden. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown, such a big fan and follower of your work, applying to graduate school today for play therapy. Oh, yay.
Very good.
Good. That's wonderful. We need that. Hide and seek, water play, swimming. And I love to swing, especially under the rain. Okay. One question, Professor. I am concerned about this issue for the future. How can we support children to not be worried about others?
I think you can be worried about others and still engage them and yourself in moments of play. And I think it's really important when we're all kind of down and out and fearful about the pandemic and the economic downturn to still find within ourselves, within the pets that we have, and within our environment, these elements that lead to moments of playfulness. You know, one of the respondents talked about dance and rhythm and music. So I think we can find moments that still give us, from what play produces, some optimism, some hope for the future, some planning for the future, some adaptation, which is part of why play has existed evolutionarily through all these millions of years. It's helped us cope with a challenging and difficult, often tragic world.
Mm-hmm. And Professor Brown, can you do you have moments when you forget about the playfulness in life, when you get too serious in work or something? Do you have those moments, or is it
of course, I think we all have those moments. You can't practice medicine, and I had an internal medicine residency and was on the oncology service for a number of years, and it was really tough to be around suffering people who were dying. But even those folks, often if they found some meaning and some sense of purpose, and often some sense of humor, mm-hmm. even in the face of their death, this was amazing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think play belongs in our lives if we can find it. Mm-hmm. And it's tough if you're suffering, or if you're hungry, or if you're impoverished. It's pretty tough to find. It's nice to be safe and well fed, in which case mm-hmm. play comes naturally.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say, because I observe for myself that once I'm working a lot, and it's actually our daughter who helps me to get out of this mind, I have to do this and this and this. And then it is, so for me, the question is, how can I get from the moment of not being playful into the playfulness? And my experience is that we only get there through our awareness and to make a decision. What do we want right now? How is your experience? How do we really cross the border? And I mean, we are facing at the moment so many situations where we perhaps forget to be playful. So how can we consciously create the bridge to being more playful with each other?
Well, I think our bodies give us a clue, and oftentimes movement, or being out mm-hmm. in nature, mm-hmm. even mm-hmm. if you're just taking a walk on a street in New York. It's still maybe possible.
Mm-hmm.
Very movement and the very sucking in of fresh air often shifts one's
Mm-hmm.
mood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, it is tough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any simple, there are no simple, straightforward work for everybody answers, but part of the reason I emphasize the play personality is where in you is there some joy that you can think back and find memories of a favorite toy or a pet or a birthday or a vacation or a scene in a beautiful area, and meditate on that and somehow get that emotion that's associated with that period of joyfulness back into yourself for even if it's just a few minutes. And I think that helps. It doesn't solve it isn't going to solve the pandemic, but it's certainly going to make the day better.
Yeah. Brings you into another state.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have a couple of other questions for Professor Brown, and then I have some for Ute that are more Pikler related. This one, Professor Brown, I have been thinking about children re-entering the world after walking in a park yesterday and hearing someone call to the child, and I quote, don't go there. There are people, end quote. I am concerned about this issue for the future. How can we support children to not be worried about others? I think it's similar to the other question that you answered.
Well, I think the don't go there is at its core an empathic, considerate sense that if they're carrying the virus or I'm carrying the virus asymptomatically, I'm being considerate of them. That's a moral cause that's noble. So I think that from my standpoint, the origins of empathy, the ability to feel something for another person starts very, very early, starts in the pre-verbal, preschool era that you're so familiar with, Elsa. And, if it's missed, often there is a lack of empathy thereafter. But it seems to me one of the things, I've been walking the streets in Carmel Valley where I live, and there are a lot more people out on the street. Everyone is formidably more friendly now and verbal because we're all kind of in the same boat. And I think if we think of the polarizations that are part of our politics and our nation and our world, we still are one species. And the pandemic shows that we're one species, and play itself shows that we are one species. And if we can somehow get a movement toward really realizing that each of us, well, look at this group here. We're of different ages, different places, different genders. We still belong to each other because of play. And I think that can happen globally more than it has.
Mm-hmm.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you, Professor. I would like to invite Ute Strub, but we will still have an opportunity to answer questions by Professor Brown if you have them. But I wanted to invite Ute because I am getting some Pikler related questions. And Ute, I know you have a plan to offer us a specific presentation today about the practicality of play, and you have something special prepared for us. But I wonder if you would like to answer some questions first, if I should read them to you and then you answer them later. It had to do with Professor Brown's presentation. May I ask you now, or would you like me to ask later?
Okay, yes, do.
Okay, this one is very particular for you because you are a physiotherapist and you worked in a hospital with people that were not able to walk. And this is a question I think is very good for you. How can play be used with young people with learning disabilities or special needs?
Well, I mean, first they should find out what is the interest of this. If they observe this child with special needs, for what is she interested? And according to her interest, she might find something with what she could play, you know?
Yeah, it has to do with observing the child, coming to know the child. It has to do also, there was another question about the adult's role in play. And I know from Dr. Pikler, one of the roles is to observe the child, to see what interests them. So then you can set up the environment accordingly. And you're learning from your child by the way the child plays. But I would love for you to expand, Ute, in the Pikler way. What is the role of the adult in play? Because there may be sometimes a misconception, and we never want the child to feel abandoned. So I would love for you to talk about that.
Well, you see, I had a 4-year-old foster child once for 1.5 years. And I remember when I was preparing the meal in the kitchen, he would be with me in the kitchen. And one day he was going from the stool to the chair, and from the chair to another stool. And he usually asked me, "Where am I now?" And I said, "Oh, no, you are in Africa." And then he went to the next stool and he asked again, "And where am I now?" And I had to find another country and so on. Yeah, so this was the way I brought myself into his playfulness. Would this be an answer to her question?
Very good answer, Ute. And we have some questions actually that will be answered next week, because one of the questions is about using FaceTime, video calls during this time of isolation. Next week, we have an expert that will talk about that topic. However, Professor Brown, would you like, because now being in isolation and we have tablets or computers or television at our fingertips, what do you think, let me repeat the question, can we talk a little on play over FaceTime or video calls during this time of isolation?
You know, I think that's a tough one. It depends on the age. It depends on the content of the whether it's a game or a video game or it's FaceTime between two friends. It's you know, I have this 17-year-old grandson, and he is involved with members of his mountain bike team, and they talk to each other daily. And from what my daughter says, this is a big part of his life. She, however, is very concerned when he spends a lot of time on video games, because she thinks it's not a matter of personal growth. So I think there's not a simple answer. I think there is no question that for some of us, playing a game, being involved with a video game, having straight screen time has its play components. There also is a quality of escapism, which is not a real linkage to something deep within oneself. And I think that somehow families can have a sense of joint purpose and role modeling for each age, that part of this pandemic gives us the opportunity to feel for our neighbors, to feel for each other, and to have a certain personal growth from the crisis. That's maybe a Pollyanna type of response, but I don't have a simple, easy response to screen time.
Thank you, Professor, very much. And we will talk about this more next week. with Pia and our guest panelists. I would like now to invite Granny Ute. Are you ready to play with us?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, when I first in 1979 met Emmy Pikler for the first time, I had the possibility to observe the children in the nursery home. And I saw a little boy, about 15 or 17 months old, and he had a big toy this size, yeah, and he held it up and let it fall. And it came down to the floor with this kind of movements, these dancing movements, until it was still. And he was observing this and lifting it up again and let it fall again. And I started to count, how often will he do this now? Because the second time it did the same. So he held it up this third time and again let it fall, and it came again like this, down to the ground and to quiet. And I counted 8 times he was doing it. And then he was standing like that. And when I told this, Emmy Pikler, she said, yes, he had to ponder about this. He had to think about it. Because he was so much outside in the world with this phenomenon that now he had to come back to himself, and this, the thumb, helped. You see, the sucking sometimes helps. And after this, he was looking around and he found 2 little sieves, and he did the same thing and they did the same thing. And he was pleased, and he looked up and he saw that I had seen this too. And he beamed because he could, he knew somebody had seen this too. And I think with telling this story, I got the heart of Emmy Pikler ever since. And well, now with this kind of movement, I prepared something what everybody now in quarantine has in his home. You don't need a spinning top. You just use what you have in your kitchen, or you use, if you are allowed to go outside, if you find a stone. I will show you.
Moment, ich gehe jetzt. Moment, ich komme.
Yeah.
Technik, Moment.
Just a moment. Okay.
Oops.
You see, if you find a stone in the shape of an egg and you twist it, it might even. No, this one doesn't. But sometimes, if you turn it horizontal, it stands up. But this one doesn't now. But you see, you can twist with stones, and you can spin with shells. With all kinds of things you can play spinning tops. And I always like this end. Bloop.
Langsam. Sag was dazu. Sag was dazu.
Even with the medicine box, you can do it. With a for the plant, for the flower pot. And all the kitchen.
Ich kann nicht zwei Sachen gleichzeitig.
The lids, the baskets, So once when I had to pack my suitcase for the next play seminar in the Pikler training, I just used everything in my surrounding and to explore how it would spin. And well, I think you can in this big bowl, there's some sand. And it's quite interesting how it moves the sand inside and how it comes together. Well, this is just a short example how you can play with all the kitchenware or whatever you find in your household.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ute. And it reminds me of a moment between our daughter and a friend. So the friend is in her late 50s, and they were at the beach together. And our daughter asked her, "Do you want to play with me?" And she said, "Yes, but I don't know how to." And our daughter said, "Well, you don't know how to play. You just do whatever you want to." And I think we, as an adult, we are so used to have something on our mind, how play should be. And we are so used to have all those roles that it is, yeah, lovely to see some very simple ways how play can look like, and that we don't have to buy so many things. It's just, we have to be open to come into moments where we really observe and where we create something out of nothing. And I would say that's the beauty and the opportunity of the situation we are in right now, to create, to come back to this creativity, to build something or to observe something, to experience moments without nothing, and really to be present in the moment.
This reminds me of a little scene I observed in 1992 in Yugoslavia during the wartime. And there was a little boy, about 5 or 6 years old, and his parents had a talk in another room, and he was sitting there, and he had three little wire this size, and he was a 3/4 of an hour. He was playing with this, turning them around. Sometimes I had the feeling it was a family, and sometimes they were dancing. So he was completely with this 3 little wires, and happy for himself.
Mm-hmm. And we had one questions from the audience, which was, how can I help children who haven't learned how to freely play to get engaged again? And it's about to make them curious, right? Or as you mentioned, to observe what they might be interested in, and even to offer. I mean, if you would do this with a child, they certainly would like to engage in.
If you start yourself to play, they come in again. And for instance, if a little boy who couldn't play anymore and he wanted me to build something with his blocks, then I tried to give the initiative back to him. So I asked him, well, where should I put this block? Where should I put it? And so he said,
oh, sorry, technique is gone.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, we still can hear and see Ute.
So he showed me where to put it, and so then he asked, then he ordered me again, put this there, and so I always gave him back the initiative, and this brings him back to play. You understand what I mean?
Yeah. And Ute, a personal question. Once you are playing, those qualities you experience within yourself, this this joyfulness and this openness and this freedom, would you say you remember those moments when you were little? So my question is, do we have the still kind of playfulness? Is this a personal thing? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but I think I was not as playful as a child than I'm now. It developed. When I was 50, I started to collect stones. And later
when you were 50?
When I was 50. And with 50 already I was with little sticks and so on. So, and the gathering, you know, this is a very important part of the play development, Pikler found out, and so it happened with the gathering with me, and from this I got interested, for instance, in I have just a moment, I get something, I have it here.
I love this improvisation. I just love it. Hopefully she's not going into her garden.
She's lost in the playground. That's also good.
Meine Tücher. Okay. You see, if you have fabric, you can play with fabric, and it always makes.
Towel, Ute, would a towel work as well? A towel?
A silk towel?
No, normales Handtuch. A towel?
A towel, but silk or wool would be nice, you know, and only one color, but it can do all kinds of things. So this playfulness, it still can develop, and by for instance, I collected the fruits of platanas. You know, here. Yeah.
Du musst weiter in den Raum gehen, damit man dich sieht.
Yeah, like this. The fruits of platanas, they, if they lie on the street over the winter time, the inside they have a kernel, and if you have 2 of them, they make such nice dancing, and if you, with a shadow, yeah, it makes a very nice dance. So actually I try with everything to play.
So as we are running out of time, perhaps that's a good end to say it's never too late to start to play, to be playful, right?
Now
and for the and for those who are celebrating Easter, that might be an opportunity to spill the Easter eggs around, right?
Yes, yes, or to paint them.
Or to paint them, exactly, yeah.
Thank you, dear Ute. Thank you, dear Pia. Professor, we are about to say goodbye. Do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share?
Well, I think play is a public health necessity as important to our well-being as our immunity system will be to fight off the pandemic. So let's prioritize it. You got your values straight, Elsa. Thank you.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you to all the panels. This is extraordinary. Thank you to all the participants. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of your questions. We will have more webinars to address some of these key points that you were asking about. And I would just like to, in closing, offer you this quote by Maria Montessori. And I quote, "The unknown energy that can help humanity is that which lies hidden in the child. We must therefore turn to the child as the key to the fate of our future." Beautiful quote by Maria Montessori.
And how wonderful.
Wonderful. And we thank you, everybody. And during this time of reflection and introspection, we wish you a blessed Passover, a blessed Easter, a blessed day. And until next time.
Thank you very much, Elsa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Professor, what an honor. Hope you come back. Thank you.
Thank you.